Let's talk hatchery world here. So we are on Lost Land Lake. We're rewinding back to the spring. This is our hatchery crew out there collecting eggs from muskies on Lost Land Lake, which they had a very easy time doing. They caught 112 fish without too much effort. And I'm going to show you the size of those fish here, and one really interesting thing that we learned as a part of that. So this is the size distribution of all the muskies we caught, shown in 5-inch bins, so they're really big, wide bins. There's two colors on here. There's a blue color and there's a red color. All the blue fish are just general muskies that were out there. We don't know how old they are. We don't know if they're stocked or natural born, things like that. All the red fish are from one stocked year class in 2012 that is dominating the fishery right now. It makes up, over half of what's in that 30 to 35-inch bin. Pretty good chunk of some of the other bins too. So, what does this tell us? Well, all these fish were pit tagged, so we know for sure they were stocked. We know for sure the year they were stocked. We know the size they were stocked at. We know the size of that stocked year class in general was pretty big. So we had a big year class that came in and is contributing pretty heavily. Picture this size distribution without those red bars. If we hadn't done that stocking, the Lost Land fishery would look quite a bit different right now. So as a biologist, I'm learning all sorts of things from this. And I have been saying to you guys for years that we invest in this pit tags technology, we put these tags out there, we do the work to go and recapture them, and we're going to learn things that are going to help our management. This is a great example of that. And this wasn't even something we expected to learn. We just kind of ran into this. So this tells us a lot about our success stocking muskies in that particular lake. And again, these are the bigger stocked fish. I'm going to take you to the hatchery here. Can you go back one, Scott? There you go. This is going to be difficult to see, even under the best lighting. We're at the hatchery here. All the eggs we took from Lost Land Lake were raised into little fry and fingerlings that were stocked out in these ponds. They're being grown so they can go back into the wild into various lakes throughout Wisconsin, mostly northwest Wisconsin. One of the issues we've had at the hatchery in recent years that we've documented is ospreys eating lots and lots of muskies out of our ponds. There are a bunch of osprey nests kind of ringing the hatchery there, and they have learned that that's a great place to be because, look, the people are going to raise the fish for us. We don't even have to work that hard. We did a project a couple years ago where we tried to estimate how many muskies were being eaten by the ospreys, and our estimate was over 5,000 muskies a year. And the price tag on those fish is close to $10, so there's tens of thousands of dollars of muskies that are literally flying up into thin air. So we wanted to solve that problem, and our local Muskies Inc. chapter really wanted to solve that problem with us. So they came to the table with some funds, we came to the table with some ideas, and what we came up with was this netting system. And this is baler twine. It's orange baler twine. You probably can't see it super well here, so I'm going to take you on a video tour. Now you can press it again and we'll start moving. So this is Governor Thompson Hatchery. The big ponds on the right are our 1-acre ponds. Those were filled with walleye this year. The osprey don't really mess with them. They're smaller, they stay close to the bottom. You might argue they're smarter than muskies. On the left, we have our smaller ponds, and those are going to be the ones that have the netting, and you'll get a good look at them as we take the turn here. This is just going to we're going to give you a little hatchery tour right here in the middle of winter. So there's that netting. They originally started with about 30-inch spacing, and the ospreys were lining it up and diving between that. And sometimes they were getting fish. Their success rate was lower. It was definitely starting to deter them, but the hatchery folks said, we don't want to see this happening at all. So then they started closing up that gap and making it even tighter and getting it down to about, I think, 15 to 18 inches. And we ran them at crazy angles. And this seemed to be a pretty good deterrent to the ospreys. We don't have an estimate of, how many were taken this year, but they spent a lot of time watching them, and it seemed to baffle them pretty good, especially in this late stage when they're big and they're hanging out high in the water column. So you can see the truck here. This pond's being drained. We're going to load those muskies up onto the truck, and you're going to get to watch it happen. So we'll go to the next video, Scott. Tap again. So as this pond's draining down, they go around with this seine net. And they do this because it's a little easier on the fish. Instead of waiting for it to drain all the way down and having them fully confined, they're trying to seine them up before it gets to that point and start loading them. Each of these ponds might have anywhere from like 2,000 to 3,000 muskies in it. So these guys and women there, there's both now, they're the best probably in the world at raising muskies. They have all these tricks and tips and things figured out from decades of experience at Governor Thompson Hatchery. And it's neat how it all gets passed down. It's almost like a family history. The previous guy figured this out, and he's going to pass it on to the new supervisor. So one more, Scott. We got another video. Maybe you've seen this video before. This is the fish loader. So these fish are coming out into the truck. That's where we're standing. He's on the deck of the truck. They're coming through this tube, and I swear to you, there's not a scale lost on these fish as they go through this apparatus, which includes going up through this tower from this red tube that is pumping them from way down, maybe about 20 feet below. And what this does is it makes the process a lot faster. We think it's actually easier on the fish. It is certainly easier on the hatchery people to not be bucketing 3,000 fish up, one 5-gallon bucket at a time. What Greg's looking at there is actually a volume displacement gauge, and that's how they estimate how many muskies are in the truck. They calibrate that every morning. So Greg looks and he says, okay, when a water level went up 2 inches, that's 800 muskies today. So all very cool stuff. We've tried to work more closely with the hatchery in the next few years, or the last few years. They're great friends to have, especially when there's surplus muskies and they're going to make a phone call about where they're going to go. I want to be the first phone that rings. So cool stuff. Go one more for me. Fall stocking that goes on, though, there's a lot of surveys to see how much natural-born muskies and walleye are out there in the world, too. So we do surveys on almost 24 lakes in the area. And I'm not going to show a lot of individual results, but I will say generally it was a fairly good year. We saw little muskies on about a half-dozen lakes. We saw little walleye in a number of places. Nothing huge, nothing off the charts, but some solid reproduction in a few places. The chipple flowage kind of led the pack this year for walleye reproduction, so we had a nice one there. So I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to throw cold water on it right away. Give me one more, Scott. So this is our walleye recruitment history on the chipple flowage, going all the way back in time to as far as we go. You can see the little bar down there for 2018. That's our big year class. And you put that in context of what this lake used to do, and you see that, wow, things have changed quite a bit. We used to have massive year classes, lots and lots of walleye, and we used to do it fairly consistently. Now we're working pretty hard to just get what would be considered a modest or a pretty small one in the past. Give me one more, Scott. I'll kind of throw a shape on this for you. We expect these populations to do this, to oscillate. We expect good years to sometimes be followed by bad years. What's happening is our good years aren't as good, and our bad years are worse and more common. So if you just looked at the last 5 to 10 years, you'd say, wow, this is great, we're turning it around. But again, in the context of our longer time span here, this is not great. And this all ties back to what I was saying earlier about the climate is changing, and it is not as favorable for walleye as it used to be, and you're looking right at it. So we'll continue to work on this, though, and we have researchers that are looking at this problem. We're stocking where we need to stock. We're certainly not going to abandon managing walleye, but it's not as easy as it used to be either. Go one more for me, Scott. I'm not going to end on a downer. I refuse to do it. So we're going to talk a little bit about muskies and pit tags. Adult muskies, big muskies. And we're going to talk about how we've involved anglers in that. So we have been putting pit tags out as the DNR for quite a long time now. We've put out over 24,000 into muskies in the Sawyer County area. We have worked with Muskies Inc. and guides and anglers and resorts and all sorts of people that are interested in this issue to try and get that data back. So we send them out with scanners and we say, hey, help us when you catch a muskie, scan it, give us the data. Starting in 2018, we took this to the next level. For some of the folks that have been involved in this project for a number of years, we're doing a good job collecting data. We said, you're graduating. You get to tag your own fish now. That's done under a permit after they've been trained a little bit. But it's been really cool. We've learned a lot more new stuff, and they've really increased the amount of tags that we're able to put out. By having just 4 or 5 anglers this year, we put out 48% more tags. So we like that. I'm going to tell you a couple interesting stories. Go for me, Scott. There's going to be a bunch of clicks here, but I'll just wait until I'm set up here. One of the things we learned from tags is kind of the wacky movements that fish make. This isn't necessarily something that's going to change our whole management strategy, but it's very interesting to see what these fish are capable of in all of our interconnected waters and what they choose to do just on their own. So we have seen muskies, you can tap once for me, we've seen muskies go from Alcyone to grindstone. I showed you earlier we've seen them go into Alcyone whitefish. We've seen them go from sand lake into LCO. So that whole Couderay system there, they move about pretty freely. We've seen, go for me, we've seen them go from Spider Lake down to Tiger Cat. This year we saw them go from Teal Lake, you tap it, all the way down to Shearpin Bar in the chipple flowage. One more. This is the wackiest one. That fish was tagged in Moose Lake in 2008. had not been seen for 10 years, and it was caught by an angler below the winter dam on the Chippewa. So, this is what they do. They have always had this kind of interconnected landscape. They don't see boundaries the same way we do when we think about fishing regulations and boat landings and roads and things like that. They're out there swimming. What this tells us as managers is the fish are treating this as interconnected water, and so we have to as well, especially when you think about things like genetics. We don't want to be bringing in some wacky genetics into one of these lakes on the upper end of the headwaters that's going to wind up downstream and get in the way of our native genetics or something like that. So, interesting stuff. One more, Scott. Okay, so once we started having guides tagging fish, we started getting more data, including from places we hadn't gotten it from before. Give me a tap. Steve Jensen did a lot of this, a lot of tagging for us. So he tagged a muskie with one of his clients on a lake that I'm not going to name. He let it go. He did a good job. Give me another tap. 2 days later, Steve, with a different client, catches the same fish on the other side of the lake. So what do we learn from this? Well, these fish are crazy. They're going to bite a lure twice in the span of almost 48 hours. And we also learned that Steve's catch and release practices are really good. His tagging method must have been good. He didn't stress this fish out because it's back out there feeding almost immediately. I do hope after the second time it found something real to eat that didn't have treble hooks in it. But good for Steve. He got, made 2 clients happy. And I don't think that's actually the same fish. I grabbed kind of random photos from Steve. All right, we got another one here that's a similar situation, but we have had a number of times where guides have caught the same fish once in 1 year, and the other guide caught it the next year. So same kind of story. We know they're doing a good job releasing it. And you think about how muskie fishing was, say, 40 years ago. The first guy to catch it would have killed it. So now we're actually having the ability for these guides to share fish with each other. That's a good thing for everybody. That's a good thing, from an economic standpoint, that people are coming here, catching fish, they're happy. And those aren't the same fish either. And these are, again, random photos. But we have seen this a number of times. Sometimes Steve catches it first, sometimes Pete. But they are 4-time muskie buddies, which is the phrase I'm trying to coin. I don't know if it's going to stick. All right. Anything else here? I think that might be our last slide. Go for me, Scott. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of